So nice to see some new faces this month. My name is Jen Sabaoth. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Strength of Community monthly chat group that's hosted by the Front Porch Home Office in Glendale. These chats happen every month on the third Thursday at 3. I would like to introduce my co-host, who is also here live in the home office, Carmen Boykins. Carmen has a really cool friendship story to tell from her time at Villa Gardens. So, Carmen, can you share that story with us?
Hi, everyone. Like Jen said, I'm Carmen Boykins, and I am the sales and marketing coordinator here at the home office. So I started at Villa Gardens in Pasadena as the sales and marketing assistant there. And at the time, my boss, she introduced me to a resident who currently lives there, who had been living there for about 2 years. Her name is Nan Johnson. And this wonderful woman came up to us with a newspaper out of the New York Times and said, the 100th year anniversary of the women winning the right to vote is coming up. How are we going to celebrate? We have to do something about this. This is a big deal. Help me figure out how we're going to celebrate this. So we didn't know what that meant at first. We were just thinking maybe, a small little dinner or something that all the residents of Villa Gardens get to attend. No. We brainstormed and came up with a group of 8 that started, and it expanded very largely, but we were able to get a float in the Rose Parade.
Wow.
And so
Whoa.
that's how we decided to celebrate the 100th year anniversary of women winning the right to vote. And so the connection that I made was with that lovely resident, Nan Johnson. We connected on so many levels. There's a picture of her there. There's a picture
Wow.
of her in front of the float and me in front of the float. But we connected on so many different levels. She's from the East Coast. My father's from the East Coast. She is an only child. I'm an only child also. She also has a granddaughter that's my age. And at the time, my grandparents had just passed on. So I just made that connection with her. She's given me so much wisdom and has taught me so much. And I've learned so much about her life, of her work through politics and her humanitarian nature, which is how we really connected on our willingness and love to help others. So yeah, that's just my brief story. While I was there at Villa Gardens, I made great connections with many people. I see Winnie, you're here today too. It's good to see you. So yeah, that's enough about my short story, but I would like to introduce our first guest, if that's okay with you guys, Pat and Zach. They share a really unique bond that really supersedes the generations that separate them. So let's get started with you, Miss Pat. Miss Pat, tell us where you live now, how long you've lived there, and how you and Zach became friends.
I've lived at Wesley Palms for about 12 years. I came here, I was still working at the university, and I didn't get involved in too many things, but exercise classes interested me, and I did that. Zach came about 3.5 years ago now, and I started going to his exercise classes. And then, as many old teachers do, I noticed that he was a student. And so our initial connection had to do with my busybody concern about his education life and what he was doing. And that connection led us to other connections, and we've been very good friends since then. What do you want to say, Zach?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Zach, tell us how long you've been at Wesley and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so hi guys, I'm Zach Vandegrift. I've been working here at Wesley Palms for about 3.5 years in our life enrichment department. So my title is a life enrichment specialist, and it's essentially my job to put together activities. I teach our morning chair exercise classes. I teach meditation and yoga. I'll put together arts and crafts, host movie events. We'll do small group work. When COVID's not happening, plan a lot of outings. We'll go to ball games and the symphony. And so all that stuff kind of falls under my umbrella here. Pat and I share a lot of similar views on things. And so I think because of that, we become trusted confidants for each other. Like I can bounce ideas off her at any time. If I'm having a super busy, hectic day and I need a friend to vent to, I can talk to Pat. You know, she checks up on me, just like I check up on her.
No, I would just say also that I don't know how many others of you, but I know there are a good number of us in Wesley Palms or at Front Porch who have issues with depression. And I have had those for years. And I'm sure there are lots of others of you who have issues with depression. And so one of the ways I can deal with my depression is asking Zach for stories or forcing him to do other activities. He runs the world here, really. And so it's lucky when we can have some time to chat. And it's been very helpful with my downtime to help me go around the corner and come out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of probably the first things that we had connected on. So I met Pat probably in my first few days working here at Wesley Palms. She came to our office I can't remember if she came to ask a question or maybe she had a suggestion of how we could do things better. And the two of us ended up chatting for probably half an hour in our first meeting. She asked a lot of questions about who I was and my background, and I did the same. And we just kind of clicked right off the bat. But I was starting actually the next week, my first meditation classes here. And Pat is kind enough to come to my class and support me when I was first starting. And she hasn't really stopped since. Those first few months, I think a lot of the residents here weren't super sure about meditation. You know, they thought like, oh, maybe this is just, I'm just going to sit quietly. I don't know if I'm down for that. But Pat came every time, and she encouraged her friends and neighbors. And in those first few months, there was a lot of times where it was just the two of us, and we would meditate, and then we'd have time to chat. And when you get into that meditative space, I know for me, like sometimes like the emotions I'm dealing with come up. And I think it was in one of those times sitting in our chapel, the two of us after meditating, where she opened up to me about her experience with depression. And I was able to share my experiences with depression. And I think there was just something so fundamental about, you know, that kind of disclosure and that feeling of trust that we had with each other that, I mean, we've been thick as thieves ever since.
Yep.
Our next guests from Vista del Monte, Ellin and Len. I'm going to start with Len. I'm trying to locate Len here in my gallery. There you are. There you are, Len.
Oh, let's see. I think I've lived at Vista about 7 years. Actually, Ellin and I first met when she was my landlady. When I first moved back to Santa Barbara, and then I moved out, and then I moved back, and had a hard time deciding. I happened to be in a wheelchair, so I was very concerned about what happens when I'm not able to drive anymore, and knowing I would be very isolated. Ellin was exploring places, and I was a hospice volunteer, so I got an opportunity to visit a lot of the places in the area. And there was something about Vista. It had a a comfortable feeling. I like to say it was in the Goldilocks zone. And it just really felt right, and people were outgoing and friendly, and I had thought about it and not thought about it, and being a man a little bit indecisive when it comes to making decisions. Ellen decided to start looking around at places. She took me along with her when she went to Vista. They showed me two places. I looked at one of them and I said, "This is it." 2 weeks later, I had moved in, and Ellen was still. She didn't like the idea that she was the one that was looking and I was the one that moved in. I would say our friendship here has really strengthened, and along with meeting so many wonderful people here, but just having somebody you can bounce stuff off of. And it's such a new lifestyle. It's a place that I never thought I was going to be. It has been such a wonderful experience in so many ways. This sounds very strange, being in a wheelchair and being limited, that I feel I'm as happy as I've ever been in my life.
Good for you.
Did I answer everything?
You did. Ellen, what do you have to add to your friendship story?
Well, I found out about Vista when one of my friends, and Len knew her too. We both belonged to the same church at one time. But her house burned down in a tea fire here, and she moved in and was one of my tenants. This was back in 2009. Len was living there, I think, at the time too.
Yeah.
But she had belonged to the fitness center here at Vista and came over and swam all the time. And her interest really interested me, and that's what got me interested. After she moved over here, I came over several times, and I was looking around. But in fact, I asked Jean when I could move in, and I started asking her when I was 72, and she says, "You're still too young." She wouldn't let me move in. But I moved here in August of 2016, about 4.5 years ago. And it really was special because Len and I used to have dinner all the time when he was living in the apartments. And so when he moved over here, then I would still come over here and pick him up, and we'd go to lunch. But after I moved in, then we started having dinner together, and we've had dinner together almost every Saturday night since we've been here. But there's 3 other friends that Shirley is one of them that went to the same church. And so there's 5 of us that went to the same church. And we really have a friendship here with all of us. It's really great to have friends. And because Len was here and others were here, it was so much easier to find other friends here at at Vista. I mean, it really helped. I mean, it was a great relationship we all had.
Do you want to share what it's meant to you to be there during this time, during a pandemic?
Well, I think it would have been very difficult for me anyway, if the pandemic had come while I was still renting apartments or when I was living by myself. I mean, it would have been totally different. And here the pandemic has been difficult for everybody, but Vista has really provided some things that I think are very important. personally, I think that connection with other people is one of the best things to help me both physically, mentally, and spiritually. I think that really helps to connect. And Vista has provided so many opportunities for us to do that. One of the things that they come around on Monday with a cart and bring games and puzzles and candy. On Wednesday, they bring ice cream. On Friday, we get a quarantini, a drink, you know. I like the ice cream day more than anything else, but but those are fun things. We have exercise programs where we do exercises from our balconies and in the courtyards and stuff, but there's so many opportunities to get together. One of the things that we do, this group of 5 of us, most of the time, early in the morning at 9 o'clock, we would get down to the lounge and we'll chat for a few minutes. Now we maintain our distance, we have our masks on and things like this, you know, but we've always connected almost every single day, you know, since the pandemic started. And so there's just so many opportunities. One other thing that I'll mention is the Zoom meetings. We play Zoom bingo. I won 2 games today. We have Zoom meditation. There's 3 Zoom meditations a week. And we have a lot of other fun activities and things like that. If we can't meet together, then we do it on Zoom. Those are just a few things. There's many, many, many more things that allow us to connect.
We're so glad that you and Len both chose Vista and can continue your friendship there at Vista. Carmen, do you want to introduce our?
Yeah, so our last featured guests are Sue and Tom, who have an inspiring story to share. Tom and Sue, please tell us where you live now, how long you've been there, and tell us how you met.
I'm Tom Metzger in Carlsbad by the Sea, and I'll start because our introduction came via a very special person for both of us. She was the dining room manager, where one night I went down for dinner and she asked me if I'd like to have dinner with Sue Haber. And I said, sure. And that was the first time we had met. And we found that we had a lot of common things in our history. One of which starts back in the San Fernando Valley in the 50s, where she had just moved to the valley from, I believe it was Indiana.
No, the East Coast.
East Coast, that's right. Connecticut. She was born in Indiana. But that night we found other common relationships, which was she worked for Xerox, and I had Xerox as one of the vendors that supported me in a job that I had at one time. So we had things to talk about. From that night, we met several times for dinner, and soon it became we had dinner every night. Before long, it became if we went down there, it was always with 2 other couples or some of the singles, but we were always together for dinner. Fast forward to the pandemic time. So I live in the main building, and Sue lived in the ocean front. And of course, with the fear of the pandemic and being locked down to your apartments, as it wasn't too long before we both realized that really is not what either one of us wanted, and you had to be a household. So one night I said, would you like to move in? And I let Sue answer that question.
As he asked me, I was surprised, and I was also surprised at how quickly I said yes. And I waited for a while quietly, and then I said, okay, Tom, I'd like you to ask me again. And he looked at me like I was kind of wigging out on him. And he said, okay. And he asked. And at the end of the question, I said, okay, I'll give you 10 minutes and 10 minutes only. And it has to be for real. And if I say yes, that's it. And that's how it worked out.
And of course, I did chuckle a bit, but that was only to cover up a curiosity. But 10 minutes later, I didn't say a word.
So
And here we are.
how has that been, and what has that been like to combine households now?
Well, that is a good question, because that strikes at the heart of a solid relationship. If two people that have come from and failed downsizing several times get together and have two complete households, one of which is very contemporary oriented, the other is more transitional, traditional. If you can weather that storm, there's something there. And so far, we've weathered the storm.
And what was amazing to me is it wasn't a storm. We both did an equal give and take, and we have a very eclectic house.
Yes. Sue had put down one thought that she thought important when you combine households, and that is when her family comes to visit, or when my family comes to visit.
Which hasn't happened yet.
But they will. And when they walk in the door, they're going to immediately recognize home. A few added pieces, but they're going to recognize home.
Because it's a perfect blend of the two of you there.
Yes.
And we have a lot to share. He has 3 sons and I have 1. And I have 3 grandchildren, and his sons haven't been as productive in that order, in that vein. And I've had lots and lots of fun sharing the grandkids with Tom, and we've had wonderful times together. There's Tom with Cameron and Mackenzie. They're my the oldest girl and the oldest boy of the 3. And we took them to New York City and Philadelphia. There they are at the top of the Empire State, looking down toward Freedom Tower. That was a wonderful trip. We also took Mackenzie, when Cameron was younger, to Washington, D.C. And we had a fabulous time there. It was a living history lesson. And that was great fun. So we've shared kids, we shared commonality in our backgrounds. And another thing that we shared, that first meal, the reason I really felt very hoping that I would have a second and third and fourth was that this was the first time when you've had a whole different life and a different career and different places, and you meet someone for the first time, it's hard to piece it together and get the connection and understand. And I was amazed, because after trying many times to connect to strangers, Tom asked me what I did in my career, and I told him, and he knew what I was talking about. And it just amazed me, because I had never had that connection so quickly with somebody understanding what my role was. And that was neat.
Yeah.
So we've had great fun. We've had a lot of work getting the household together. It's still not 100%. And we're looking forward to the travel after. We both have had our 2 shots, thanks to Carlsbad by the Sea. There was a fabulous program. And just, we're waiting 2.5 weeks and more, really. But we're looking forward to planning our travel and then getting it on happening. So that's our story.
Thank you. Thank you so
I
much.
have a question.
Of course.
Sure.
Claudia.
Sue, what did you do that was so incomprehensible?
I worked for Xerox, and everybody knows Xerox, okay? And I worked for them for 22 years, but my role was with a division of Xerox that was just growing when I started. And that was in the high-end printing systems. We were printing at, our devices could print, they took up a room practically, and it could print at 120 cut sheet pieces of paper a minute. And I worked with them through all different aspects. I was first the manager of the systems analysts that were necessary to talk to the computing people about how to install our machines and how to use them and what kind of
Right.
applications. And then after the managing of the analyst, I went into the home office, and I was in El Segundo, California. And I was a manager of starting from ground up. Everything was really new. So I had two organizations that worked for me. One of them that was called Product Performance, that would track initial placements of machines in customer sites to know how they're working out. Are there any issues? What can we fix, et cetera? And that was very software oriented because it was working with the software on the printers. And then I had another one that was an engineering testing organization. We built it from the ground up, building the lab, the whole thing, and hiring all the people. And it was an attempt to find problems with new equipment as early as possible, so it affected fewer and fewer people. And it was a fabulous experience.
Thank you.
Then I went into corporate information management. So it was something else, quite different and very, sometimes technical, but he certainly knew as the potential as a customer. Different, not with me, but different organizations.
My introduction to Xerox was after I retired from the Marine Corps. I went to work for a law firm in Philadelphia. And I did all their major contracting and leasing and their facilities and services. And one of our vendors was Xerox. So I got to know quite a bit about Xerox. And so we had that. And what wasn't mentioned is Sue's husband was a judge. And so after 21 years, I thought I knew lawyers. And now I got the opportunity to find out a little bit more about the judges. My son is also a lawyer, so I have a little bit of a connection to the legal community. So Sue's husband was a Superior Court judge in Santa Monica and San Fernando Valley.
Well, County of LA.
County of LA.
Yeah.
So you speak each other's language.
It was great.
What a wonderful feeling. We have a really interesting question from the chat group here. This goes to everyone. Did anyone's new friendship lead to one or the other of you adopting or trying out a new hobby or interest the other person was passionate in?
We did. Tom, very athletic. He was, in the Marines and very physically fit and everything. And I was going through a very, very hard time when I was falling a lot. And I lost balance very easily. And they were dramatic falls too, nothing simple. I broke my neck one time and my ankle another, and dramatic things. So I started, as soon as I found out about it, going to strength and balance class, because it just was what I needed. And just recently,
she got me to go to strength and balance too. And I realized I probably needed it more than she did at times, which I never thought I did, but I did. So
it was a great.
You have to twist your arm too hard to get you to go.
No.
Okay, good.
We have some unmuted microphones out there, and I'm hoping you're unmuted because you have something to share.
Well, I think Len and I had so many common interests and things. We both enjoyed meditation. The big thing that we enjoyed doing was talking about real deep subjects. We spent a lot of time getting into some real deep stuff. But we went to the same church. We had a lot of similar interests spiritually. He's taught me a lot about beliefs and things about living in the now and things that were very good. We both love computers.
You
There you
both
go.
made a difference at Vista.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vista del Monte with your love of computers. I think it's great that you had that core group of friends as your hub, but that's not your group of friends. That's just your starting point from what you describe, Ellen.
Oh, it is. One of the
Yeah.
other things that I really enjoy about Vista is the resident council. The resident council, I mean, being on various committees and things like that. I happen to be the chair of the computer committee. Len is a member of my committee. Len is the chair of the safety committee here at Vista. So, but we've developed lots and lots of friends.
That's so great.
And I want to add one thing, that the staff here, we've developed a lot of friends with the staff, and I just think that they're extremely helpful. I mean, one of the other things that I forgot that they did for us during the pandemic a lot and still do is the transportation people. They go to the stores for us. They go to Costco, pick things up for us. You know, we don't have to go there. There's just so many things that the staff have done here that have really made it easier for us, where if we hadn't been here at Vista, it would have been much more difficult.
Yeah.
I think one thing I can say about Vista, and I would expect it's true with most of the installations like that, there is such a group of very interesting people. I mean, there's from all of the backgrounds and beliefs and I'm someone that I love to know what other people think, especially if it's not the same things I happen to think. I'd like to know, and it's just a place that is so alive with people with very mixed, interesting. It's a fun place to live. It really is.
Lee, go ahead. You're unmuted.
Okay, I unmuted myself. I just wanted to comment on the fact that one of the things that is so good about both Len and Ellen is that they're such giving people. They are so helpful. If there's something you need, you go to one or the other of them, and they manage to help you get through it. I'm fairly new. I'm not even a year here, but I've been to 4 other facilities in my last 5 years, I think it is. And there's something here that I haven't found elsewhere. There's a willingness for everybody to open up to each other. The people are, I mean, you don't pass somebody without at least giving a wave and saying hello. I've just found it to be very satisfying.
I think one of the important things that's happened since the pandemic is that a lot of the residents, not all of us, but a lot of them feel locked up and very sad. And we are very lucky to have a very friendly staff. And so in a sense, it might be the person who brings you your breakfast and talks with you for 1 minute is your human contact for the day. Those of us who I still have a lot of contacts outside, but I'm aware that with the pandemic and the shutdown, the staff become even more important. And we're just very, very lucky that most of them, not all, but most of them are friendly and funny and engaging. And that's one of the nicest things, certainly, about Wesley Palms. Never mind Zach, I mean the rest of the people. He's pretty good himself.
I have a question here for everybody. Have any of you discovered some new creative ways that you now love to help you keep in touch with one another? Like I know for me, for example, one way that I keep in touch with Nan at Villa Gardens, often we like to send each other these Jackie Lawson greeting cards, which they're like these little animated, you know, really beautiful e-cards that we send back and forth through email, and you can type little messages to each other. But has anyone else found, you know, fun and exciting ways to still, you know, strengthen our bonds or keep, you know, the conversation going with one another in the pandemic?
Well, for a little while, I was making jewelry. So I was able to find little magnets for the necklaces. So anybody that has a necklace that they're having a hard time hooking, if they'll give it to me, I'll take the clasp off and put a magnet on for them as a way of giving back. I also,
Very nice.
I have a supply of batteries. So anybody that has a watch that the battery has died, I will put in a new one for them as a way of giving back.
Great.
Len is really a fix-it person. He fixes a lot of things. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing is I probably help 2 or 3 people a day with computer problems. And that's a great one for me.
You've always supported many of the technology related Front Porch events. I remember you attended a Twitter chat that we did with the CIW team at your community, and you were a participant there and had gathered some other residents to come as well. So thank you for that.
That's so good to see you, Ellen.
Hi.
I have a curious question for Tom and Sue, because Sue, you lived on the ocean front, and Tom, you lived inside. So you had to combine households. Where did you do that?
I'll let Sue answer that.
We decided to be realistic about the future, and the ocean front is fabulous in environment. It's
8 feet off the sand.
literally my
Oh, you were
patio-
at the bottom. Oh.
Yeah, and it was just wonderful. I love the sound of the ocean, but the reality is it kept getting further and further away to get to the dining room every night. And to get up into the main building. So we decided that we would come to the main building and live in Tom's apartment and be looking toward the future when we can't as easily get around.
Well, that's a wonderful choice, and there's nothing wrong with the main building. It's amazing in there.
Oh,
Close
yeah.
to everything.
Well, I've noticed the communications has increased dramatically. Just walking out to get, to pick up your lunch or whatever, you run into people. And I wasn't used to that in the oceanfront.
Well, that's a nice advantage.
Yeah, we only had a neighbor on our floor. So there were just the 2 apartments and then 3 levels of it. So it was very few people. And it's just more collegial up here.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I might want to ask Pat, Pat, in our pre-conversation, you described your friendship with Zach. You said that you were both weirdos of some sort, that you were both unconventional. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What you guys
that would be unconventional for me to tell, wouldn't it? I think one of the things about living in retirement communities is, for some people, it's very obvious that you're in a place where other people are just like you. I haven't had that living experience and have had multiple kinds of living experiences. So I'm a little more self-protective than maybe I should be. I like certain kinds of fiction. I like certain kinds of theater and music. Also, I come from a non-traditional academic background. I come from a hippie background, and that's not common in much of my environment. Now, since I've been here, I've discovered there are plenty of crazy people here, so I can connect with them, and I have a lot of good friends here. But I was never a full-time housewife. I had and raised a kid, but I worked the whole time. So it's been taking a while to find other people who've had the same kind of work experiences and life experiences that I've had. So that's part of. The other is that Zach is a very attractive human being. He has a deep spiritual connection. He's crazy, and he has the ability to make people laugh and to feel that you're being heard. So that's a lovely quality to have, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think Pat and I both at times can have a dark sense of humor, and joke about things that people normally wouldn't joke about. And I'm not going to joke about here, but I think that you kind of know your people, right? Another thing I think it's been really cool. Somebody asked how have we been what have we found to talk about during the pandemic, because there's so little going on. I got Pat to read a fantasy novel series that I read. There's like 16 books. And I told her, I'm like, I think you might enjoy this. And she jumped in and she read all 16 of them.
In 3 weeks.
Yeah. So like every time I ran into Pat, I'd be like, where are you at? Where are you at in the book? What's happening? What's going on? And that was a lot of fun. I mean, we still talk about it. It's like we have another secret world that nobody else knows about.
Yeah, literary cool. Binging.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's what friendships are about, right? Those little secret worlds.
Well, and I think that's what Front Porch is about, because it is community. It's life. We are professionals in life, and you have to blur the lines. You have to remain professional, but you get to make friends. And who gets to do that? Who gets to do that as a job?
You and me, Mary.
To create life,
Well, the other thing for me is that as a professor, I'm used to connecting with young people, and it's not just Zach, but other people. And so I have memories of connecting with staff by asking them what the hell they think they're going to do with their lives. So I can prod people a little bit about where they're going to be in the future. And I love that, but that's just because it's the kind of work I did.
Ellen has an important question.
Yes, Ellen.
I just want to add one thing. I have another very special, really good friend here, and she lives 2 doors away from me. And we have an agreement that we check with each other every day to see that each other are okay. And I think that's something else about it that's neat here. It could be anywhere, just to have a friend that you can connect with every day and make sure you're okay.
Thank you, Ellen. You're absolutely right. Who's going to check on me now? I'm looking at all of you, colleagues. You can rotate. All right. Yeah.
I've been checking.
I want to do a special shout out to my friend Mary here. We have worked together for so many, many years, and we understand each other in a very unique way. And how we know that is at various points in time, we are the only 2 people laughing.
We're the only 2 that get it.
We are the only two that get it, and many times it leaves everyone else in the room with their head scratching. And I absolutely adore that I have that with you, Mary. Thank you.
Yes, I do too. I don't know what I'd do without it.
Jen, what is
Yes,
Mary?
Sue.
What is Mary's last name?
My
Mary?
name is Mary Cott, and I work in volunteer services. And so I've worked, we have little gift shops, the market that Carlsbad by the Sea used to have, and they pretty much closed or morphed during the pandemic and this last year. But I've been highly involved with those and other volunteer services throughout Front Porch for about 20 years now. So.
And if you keep coming to these events, you will see Mary often. Mary will probably be one of our hosts in the coming month. Do you want to talk about that a little, Mary?
Yeah, actually, I'm working on, we're talking baseball next month, fingers crossed, because spring training is starting and baseball is supposed to kick off. And April is National Volunteer Month. And we just have a whole host of ideas that we're percolating all the time. So we are starting to branch out and look for different ways to invite people to share. I really appreciate all the stories and all the inspiration that we received today about love and friendship and the ways that that builds community at each Front Porch community. So we're just looking for different ways that people connect. And that's really my favorite thing this year, because even with all this separation that COVID has brought us, we still can connect. So we're going to do it over baseball next month. We'll see how that goes.
Sue, here at Carlsbad by the Sea, along with another resident, tracks all the volunteer hours for all the volunteers here at Carlsbad by the Sea.
That
So
And it's very inspiring.
Yeah, there's so much going on all the time. You think, are you still collecting hours?
Yeah.
well, there's still volunteers that not only volunteer within the community, but also outside the community. That's still going on.
Yes, it certainly is. And I want to know all about all of it, because we've had to all reinvent how we do everything. And that's really what's exciting about this is you start with a basis of friendship, and then you just have to reinvent how to make those connections. Friendship is one thing, but the service that your generous hearts are giving, it's important right now. So thank you for continuing that, Sue. I appreciate it.
So in April, hopefully we'll have some stories to share from around Front Porch about volunteering. So
yes,
stay tuned for that.
Just before we close, I want to say how much I'm grateful for all the friends that I developed here at Vista del Monte, all of the staff friends that I've developed, but also the Front Porch people that have become my friends. I appreciate and I'm grateful for them as well.
Who remembers this from the beginning? Finger hearts, finger hearts. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This was very uplifting. Stay tuned for March's baseball chat. Remember, it's third Thursday at 3. And if you don't hear about it in the first week of the next month, ask your life enrichment department and they will have some information for you. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye, Jen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Joy. Bye-bye, Joy.